The U.S. hitting China with a slew of new tariffs. The White House says it's to counter the Chinese regime's unfair business practices. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley is at the White House with more.
The Biden administration announced today that it finalized new tariffs on China. That's a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, 60% on solar panel parts, and 25% on EV batteries, critical minerals, steel, aluminum, face masks, and much, much more. Now, the tariffs will go into effect on September 27th.
The president, back in May, when he was announcing that he was going to take action, he said very clearly he was going to do that to protect Americans, workers, and businesses from China's unfair trade practices.
The Chinese Communist Party subsidizes its companies so that they can produce cheap goods and flood the market. In response, Western nations have been hiking tariffs on the Chinese regime in recent months. At the last presidential debate, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump clashed over tariffs on China. Trump said that he intends to raise tariffs on China to 60% on all items across the board. Harris, meanwhile, has said that his intention to raise tariffs on other countries would be a sales tax on the middle class and that it could lead to higher prices for Americans in the short term. But those in favor of Trump's proposal say that tariffs could benefit domestic industry and encourage supply chains to move out of China. Now, on top of all this, the Biden administration said today that it's working to end a tax exemption on all low-cost products under $800 coming from China. And here at the White House, President Biden's meeting with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. They're meeting over whether they should allow Ukraine to fire their missiles into Russia. The missiles would be used to hit airfields, missile launchers, and fuel tanks. Russian leader Vladimir Putin has said that allowing this would equate to NATO countries going to war with Russia. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
There's still more to do to hold the CCP accountable for the fentanyl crisis. That's what Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said today as he was pressing the Biden administration on this very issue. Schumer wrote that companies in China continue to fuel this crisis despite efforts in the United States to curb the flow of fentanyl. The companies sell chemicals to Mexico, which are then used to make and export fentanyl into the United States. He's now urging the Biden administration to use law enforcement to crack down on these Chinese companies and on fentanyl-related money laundering. The U.S. has designated China as a major illicit drug-producing country. Schumer says the Biden administration should maintain this into 2025 if the CCP does not make progress on the issue. The Senate leader also warning there's gaps in U.S. law about the chemicals needed to make fentanyl. And next, to discuss the bipartisan support in the House of Representatives to counter Chinese threats, we have Wisconsin Congressman Tom Tiffany. Wisconsin Congressman Tom Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us.
Joining you today, Steve.
Congressman, this week the House passed 25 pieces of legislation to protect Americans regarding the military, economic, ideological, and technological threats posed by the Chinese Communist Party. Seeing support from both sides of the aisle, what message does this send to China, and which measures will have the most impact?
It's heartening that people on both sides of the aisle understand the great concern with Communist China, because you have not been awake if you don't see the challenges that China is posing to the free world and to the United States.
Congressman, you have introduced a bill. It's titled No WHO Pandemic Preparedness Treaty Without Senate Approval. First off, what are your concerns with this potential WHO treaty, and how would requiring Senate approval solve these concerns?
So the concern and the reason that the bill came forward is that we found we can't trust the World Health Organization to be a neutral arbiter. You go all the way back to the end of 2019, which was the beginning of the pandemic. Taiwan was warning the world that there was something strange going on at that Wuhan lab in China. The World Health Organization poo-pooed it. They swept it under the rug, and they protected Communist China and their role in what happened. And so with that as the setup, we said, if the Biden-Harris administration is going to enter into any accords with the World Health Organization in regards to pandemic preparedness, you have to have it subject to a vote as a treaty in the United States Senate, because it's very similar to a treaty, what they're calling for. And this is all about transparency and accountability. It passed through the House this week. and moves on to the Senate.
So, Congressman, some of these initialed institutions, whether it be the United Nations, the WHO, really have a sort of a profound communist Chinese presence there and influence. So how much of our own American sovereignty is at risk if this treaty were to be in effect?
Ultimately, that's what this is all about. Should we turn over the health of the American people to an international body? And when we see the results in a variety of ways that the United Nations has given the world, as well as the World Health Organization, they cannot be trusted. We need to protect American sovereignty. So, for example, with an agreement, so we've not been able to get the details of the agreement, which is number one. We would like to see that. But from what we understand, this would require transfers of intellectual property owned by Americans to be given to the World Health Organization. We should not do that. There may be First Amendment considerations. You know, you think about the censorship cases that the big tech social media companies, where they, in league with the Biden-Harris administration, censored speech in regards to COVID-19. They would not brook any dissent, and they used the social media companies to deny people their First Amendment rights of free speech. We could see the same thing happen if this agreement is put in place and it does not protect American sovereignty.
Now, Congressman, what would you say to those many Americans out there who want to be prepared for another pandemic, have good faith in a lot of these institutions, and, you know, may have concerns that this bill may end up, not the treaty, the bill, end up preventing any coordination about health issues?
No, won't do that at all. If there is a good agreement that's struck by the Biden-Harris administration with the World Health Organization that protects Americans' First Amendment rights to free speech, protects our sovereignty, but most importantly, protects our health, which the World Health Organization did not do during the pandemic. I mean, they were complicit in this ending up being spread around the world by not exposing what communist China was doing behind the scenes. We should be concerned about them more than anything, and let's make sure that we take care of America first.
Congressman Tom Tiffany, really appreciate you joining us.
To join you today, Steve.
Former President Trump outlining key policy proposals for California. NTD's Christina Corona attended his speech at a press conference earlier today in the deep blue state of California.
We're here in Rancho Palos Verdes, where former President Donald Trump outlined plans to improve California, including lowering taxes, addressed immigration issues, and even touched on helping those who lost their homes in natural disasters.
So you're going to have water in California at a level that you've never seen before. The farmers are going to do great. Those fields are going to be all green instead of 1% green. And maybe even more important, you're not going to have illegal immigrants pouring into your country.
This event comes just one day after he made remarks in Tucson, Arizona, where he unveiled a new policy on taxes.
I'm also announcing that as part of our additional tax cuts, we will end all taxes on overtime. The people who work overtime are among the hardest working citizens in our country. And for too long, no one in Washington has been looking out for them. They're police officers, nurses, factory workers, construction workers, truck drivers, and machine operators. It's time for the working man and woman to finally catch a break.
Just 2 days after the debate with Vice President Kamala Harris, Trump said he'll only debate her again if, quote, he's in the mood.
I did great with the debates, and I think they've answered everything. But maybe if I got in the right mood, I don't know. Right now I'm leading, and I'm leading in every single poll on the debates. Thank you.
Trump is scheduled to attend a private fundraiser in San Mateo County before heading to address supporters at the World Market Center in downtown Las Vegas. Reporting from the city of Rancho Palos Verdes, Christina Corona, NTD News.
The Harris-Walz campaign continuing its swing state visits this week. This as the Trump team responds to some of Vice President Kamala Harris's statements. NTD's Jason Blair brings us the latest.
Vice President Kamala Harris finished up 2 rallies in North Carolina on Thursday and campaigned in Pennsylvania on Friday. In Charlotte on Thursday, Harris echoed her intention to help business startups, calling small businesses the, quote, backbone of America's economy.
So my plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses.
Harris praised the Affordable Care Act and had a warning about former President Trump's intentions for it.
Donald Trump intends to end the Affordable Care Act. And as Stacey mentioned, you heard what he said in the debate. He has no plan.
The Trump campaign responded, saying that's not what he intends to do. They posted a video from one of Trump's rallies.
I'm going to keep the Affordable Care Act unless we can do something much better.
Harris also prompted a response from the Trump team regarding Social Security and Medicare.
He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare, and he wants to impose what is in effect a national sales tax. I call it a Trump sales tax.
The Trump campaign's X account said that these statements are false. Also on Thursday, Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, campaigned in Michigan, and on Friday, Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff campaigned in Mississippi and Florida. Also on Thursday, Trump said on social media that he would not debate Harris again. The Harris-Walz campaign spokesperson suggested Friday that Trump's decision was due to poor performance during the debate and said that voters were, quote, repulsed by the positions he expressed. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.